Here's the revised script, incorporating the suggested changes, removing the initial phrase and starting directly with the 2005 experiment description. I've focused on reducing repetition, simplifying sentences, varying punctuation, refining word choice, and maintaining a conversational, direct tone. In 2005, researchers at the Cambridge University Addenbrooke's Hospital embarked on a fascinating, yet slightly unsettling experiment. They gathered 19 individuals, all reporting compulsive sexual behavior, and monitored their brain activity using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, while these individuals watched sexually explicit videos. What they found was quite striking. The reward centers of these participants' brains, the ventral striatum, the dorsal anterior cingulate, and the amygdala, lit up. These are the same areas that show increased activity in the brains of individuals with substance addictions when exposed to their drug of choice. And this is where it becomes even more intriguing. Those same brain regions didn't respond with the same intensity when participants viewed non-pornographic, yet still arousing sexual images. This distinction in brain activity is crucial. It wasn't merely sexual arousal triggering the response, it was the unique nature of the pornographic material itself. Let that sink in. The brain wasn't just reacting to sexual stimuli, it was reacting to something more, something specific to the context of pornography. This brings us to a critical point, one that echoes throughout this entire discussion. Your brain, your incredibly complex and adaptive organ, is constantly learning and predicting. It's a prediction machine, always trying to anticipate what's coming next, to prepare you for what it thinks you need. And this prediction, this anticipation, is largely driven by a powerful neurochemical, dopamine. Dopamine is often mistakenly labeled as the pleasure chemical, but it's more accurately described as the motivation molecule. It's the driving force behind your desire, your seeking, your wanting. When you anticipate a reward, whether it's a delicious meal, a loving embrace, or yes, a sexually explicit video, your brain releases dopamine. This dopamine release doesn't just make you feel good, it motivates you to pursue that reward. It's a fundamental mechanism for survival, driving us to seek food, water, and of course, procreation. These are all hardwired instincts. When it comes to evolutionary success, having a healthy sexual drive is naturally a significant advantage. Our brains are wired to find sexual stimuli rewarding, encouraging us to engage in behaviors that lead to reproduction. But here's the core of the issue. Pornography, in its readily available, intensely stimulating and ever-novel form, presents an exaggerated stimulus. It's like a hyper-concentrated version of the natural reward, bypassing the usual effort and courtship rituals involved in authentic sexual encounters. Imagine a bird that's evolutionarily programmed to prefer eggs with certain markings. Now picture presenting that bird with an artificially enhanced egg, one with exaggerated markings, far beyond anything it would encounter in nature. The bird, driven by its instinct, might choose the artificial egg over its own, even though the artificial egg offers no chance of producing offspring. This is the essence of an exaggerated stimulus. It hijacks our natural reward pathways, offering an amplified version of something we're biologically programmed to desire. Pornography, with its endless novelty and easily accessible intensity, can tap into this same mechanism. It provides a shortcut to those dopamine spikes, a shortcut that, with repeated use, can start to rewire your brain. This is where the concept of desensitization comes into play. Think of it like building a tolerance to a drug. Initially, a small dose might produce a strong effect, but over time you need more and more to achieve the same level of response. Your brain, constantly bombarded with these intense dopamine spikes, starts to adapt. It downregulates dopamine receptors, meaning there are fewer docking stations for dopamine to bind to. This results in a blunted response to normal levels of stimulation. This is where the struggles many individuals face begin to manifest. Actual sexual encounters, with their nuances, imperfections, and need for genuine connection, might start to feel less exciting, less stimulating. The subtle cues, the emotional intimacy, the gradual buildup of arousal, these things may no longer trigger the same dopamine response. The brain, accustomed to the hyper-stimulating world of pornography, now finds the real world comparatively underwhelming. Mary Harrington, a British writer, coined the term the Fap Entropy Law. And while it's not a formal scientific law, it describes a very real phenomenon. Essentially, it suggests that in the absence of constraints, the consumption of readily available pornography tends towards increasingly hardcore and niche content. Why? Because of that very desensitization we just discussed. As the brain adapts to one level of stimulation, it starts to seek more intense, more novel stimuli to achieve the same dopamine release. It's a relentless pursuit of that initial high. Consider this in the context of other dopamine-driven behaviors. Think about the consumption of highly processed foods. These foods are engineered to be hyper-palatable, loaded with sugar, fat, and salt, triggering intense dopamine releases in our brains. In their natural state, foods offer a balance of nutrients and flavors, but processed foods are designed to maximize that dopamine hit, often at the expense of nutritional value. Over time, just as with pornography, someone consuming these foods regularly might find natural whole foods less appealing. The subtle flavors and textures no longer provide the same level of stimulation. The parallels are striking, aren't they? In both cases, we're dealing with exaggerated stimuli that hijack our natural reward pathways. It's not about morality, it's about biology. It's about understanding how these readily available, intensely stimulating experiences can impact the delicate balance of our neurochemistry. We are not judging you. We are simply exploring how your brain, our brains, are wired. This isn't about demonizing pleasure or advocating for complete abstinence. The key is understanding the mechanisms at play and making informed choices. It's about recognizing that your brain is a powerful, adaptable organ, and the choices you make can significantly impact its functioning. It's about moderation. It's about finding a healthy balance, a balance that allows you to enjoy life's pleasures without becoming enslaved to them. You might be thinking, if my brain is constantly adapting, can it readapt? Can I reverse this desensitization? And the answer, thankfully, is a resounding yes. Your brain is remarkably plastic. It has the capacity to rewire itself, to form new connections and strengthen existing ones. Just as it adapted to the exaggerated stimuli, it can readapt to more natural levels of stimulation. This process, however, takes time and conscious effort. It requires a deliberate shift in your behavior, a commitment to breaking the cycle of excessive stimulation. Think of it like retraining a muscle. If you've been lifting heavy weights for a long time, your muscles have adapted to that level of stress. If you suddenly stop lifting weights, your muscles will gradually return to their previous state. Similarly, if you reduce your exposure to hyper-stimulating content, your brain will gradually begin to recalibrate. But what about the psychological aspects? The impact of excessive pornography consumption isn't limited to the realm of dopamine, receptors, and brain circuits. It can also have profound effects on your self-esteem, your relationships, and your overall mental well-being. Consider the potential impact on romantic relationships. If one partner is consistently seeking sexual stimulation outside of the relationship, and if their brain has become desensitized to genuine intimacy, this can understandably create distance and disconnection. The partner may feel inadequate, unattractive, or simply unable to compete with the idealized, often unrealistic portrayals of sex found in pornography. Communication, trust, and emotional intimacy, the cornerstones of a healthy relationship, can be eroded. Furthermore, the constant exposure to unrealistic body types, sexual performances, and sexual scripts can contribute to feelings of inadequacy and anxiety. It can create unrealistic expectations about sex and relationships, leading to disappointment and dissatisfaction. It can also contribute to the objectification of others, viewing people as mere objects for sexual gratification rather than complex individuals with their own emotions and desires. Let's pause here and reflect. Have you ever considered how your own consumption habits, whether it's pornography, food, or even social media, might be impacting your brain and your behavior? Have you noticed any patterns, any shifts in your desires or your responses to authentic experiences? These are crucial questions to ask yourself, not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity and a desire for self-understanding. The main point here isn't about labeling certain behaviors as good or bad. We're focusing on the biological consequences of our choices. It's about recognizing that your brain is constantly being shaped by your experiences and that you have the power to influence that process. It's not about shame or guilt. It's about empowerment. It's about understanding the underlying mechanisms that drive your desires and making conscious choices that align with your values and your goals for a fulfilling life. It's about recognizing that the pursuit of pleasure is a natural and healthy part of being human, but that, like anything else, it needs to be balanced. Consider the ancient Greek concept of sophrosyne, a principle of moderation, self-control, and balance. It's not about denying yourself pleasure. It's about finding a harmonious equilibrium, a way to enjoy life's pleasures without being consumed by them. It's about cultivating a mindful awareness of your desires and your responses, and making choices that support your overall well-being. And this brings us back to that fundamental principle of the brain as a prediction machine. Your brain is constantly learning, adapting, and predicting based on your past experiences. If you consistently expose it to hyper-stimulating content, it will learn to expect that level of stimulation. But if you consciously choose to cultivate a more balanced approach, if you prioritize authentic connections, genuine intimacy, and a wider range of rewarding experiences, your brain will adapt to that as well. It will recalibrate, rediscovering the pleasure in the subtle, the nuanced, the real. Ultimately, the journey towards a healthier relationship with pornography or with any potentially addictive behavior is a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of understanding your own unique vulnerabilities, your own triggers, and your own capacity for change. It's about recognizing that you are not powerless in the face of your desires. You have the agency, the ability to shape your own brain, to cultivate healthier habits and to create a more fulfilling and balanced life. And that in itself is a truly empowering realization. The power to change, the power to adapt, the power to grow. It's all within you. Truly knowing that, is the first and perhaps most crucial step.